What are some of the biggest scams to have happened in history? American hospital billing. The minute you ask for an itemized receipt and breakdown, they start removing charges left and right and the bill gets reduced by 30%. Edit, added American. The last time I got a hospital bill, I sent it to my debt consolidation lawyers, and they were all like, "Don't worry about it," and they made the debt completely vanish. Fake selling of Eiffel Tower. Twice. Victor Lustig, exactly who I thought of too. He had another scheme where he sold people with too much money and not enough censor box that duplicated currency, and then when they realized they had been scammed they would either be too embarrassed to do anything or scared of being busted for attempting to counterfeit. He also told them that the box took 10 hours to complete the printing. This was to give him time to skip town. Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Gregor McGregor tricked a whole bunch of people into moving to a fake country in Central America. That's what you get for trusting a guy with 2 first names. No, he has 2 last names. The Church of Scientology. A guy I know's brother committed suicide because Scientology took all his money and was hounding him for more. Because the guy was in the military, there was a pretty deep investigation you can look up, but the short story is here. They're evil. Us telecom companies getting like 200 billion to expand infrastructure, which they didn't do, then using that money to duck us over with the FCC's fast lanes. Most of the money went to rural ISPs who just use the money to buy off all other rural ISPs and nearly bankrupt themselves with operating costs. CenturyLink and Frontier were the worst actors. Bought up a bunch of small local ISPs and cities that Verizon and DAT wanted to give up on supporting. Didn't make any improvements to infrastructure. Really should have had more regulation around it because that money was essentially stolen. I have a son who passed away 3 days after he was born. I didn't have the right insurance for a rare birth we had. $21,000 out of pocket later. He's still not here, but the bills keep coming. USA said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They invaded the country, held its leader, held millions, stayed there for decades and returned without finding any weapons of mass destruction. And they claim to be a beacon of peace and democracy, lol. Not one country took action against the USA. Nobody wants to be on the receiving end of America's wrath. Insurance. The basic concept is sound. Major events can be debilitating as they require massive payments in short amounts of time. If you spread those around between people, and, effectively, over long periods of time, it's not so debilitating. In practice, it's a giant, legalized scam. You pay money for a promise and the people making the promise do their best to deny you if and when you need to collect. The fact that insurance companies are for-profit institutions is a dead giveaway. If they were non-profits, maybe they'd be functioning institutions. Maybe. Bank bailouts. 2008, 2023. All us little guys get to bail out millionaires. The Unipity ensures the rich stay that way. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is perhaps one of the most destructive scams in human history. Its lies were used by the propaganda machine of Nazi Germany to spread anti-Jewish sentiment, and those lies persist today by piece of sheet Holocaust deniers and 4chan trolls looking to spread antisemitism. When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. No contest. No contest. Religion. Religion easily has the greatest bullshit story ever told. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do, every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place, full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you. He loves you, and he needs money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise, somehow just can't handle money. Religion takes in billions of dollars, They pay no taxes, and they always need a little more. Now, you talk about a good bullshit story. Holy shit. The US government once gave Time Warner hundreds of millions of dollars to provide internet to rural areas. Time Warner sorta just fizzled away without ever providing much of anything. Applies to every I spend the US, and they still take money and do nothing. American style health insurance. I recently spent a couple hours in an US emergency room for something relatively minor. The bill was $14,000. When I told them I was self-pay, the bill was magically reduced to $5,000. My assumption is that the $9,000 was the expected insurance company skim cut. Outrageous. Bottled water. Research suggests that for most Americans, the stuff in a bottle is not better for you than the stuff in your tap. In fact, a recent report found that almost half of all bottled water is actually derived from the tap, but may be further processed or tested for safety. 300% profit for a natural resource in plastic bottle. Nestle pays $1 total per year to bottle public water in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. Their permit is valid even during severe drought periods. They are bottling up the public's water and selling it to them. I'll only buy bottled water if local water is undrinkable or if I'm extremely desperate. Bottled water is one of the biggest scams in human history. Edit. I decided to fact check myself. Nestle actually pays $2,100 per year for their permit. According to their website, they use 703 million gallons of water a year for bottled water. So for a 12-ounce bottle they spend 0.00003 cents on water. Ticketmaster. My hate for Ticketmaster is beyond anything in the world. And they've got significantly worse in the post-COVID era. Surprisingly, I never had a problem with them prior to COVID. I was a nearly every week concert attendee for mostly smaller bands, but when Ticketmaster was used, especially wary 2010s, I didn't mind it all that much. I used to go to Walmart, go to the Ticketmaster machine in the electronics section and purchase and print tickets right there. It wasn't expensive, and nearly every time I saw that all of my money wasn't going to $30 in convenience fees. Instead, I was spending like $35 minus $80 on a decent standing room concert with $3.08 on printing fee. Mormonism. For real. It kills me that they don't pay taxes. I would buy it if there was any sort of evidence that Joseph Smith actually found giant golden tablets with the word of God on them. Where did those go? Seems like it would be hard to misplace them. Also, lol at their claims of an ancient race of white people in America. Come on. The Trojan horse. The one time they should have looked that gift horse in the mouth. It wasn't a gift. It was an offering to the gods to keep them safe as they returned home. The Trojans decided to go steal something that had been given to the gods. Probably a second moral in there somewhere. Diamonds. On similar lines, gold. Materials are often only worth the arbitrary value people put on them. When New Zealand had a gold rush, the Maori had no problem pointing out where to find gold, but they had little interest in it themselves. Too soft, not very useful. They preferred jade. Tulips in the Netherlands in the 16th century. There was a point at which one tulip bud cost as much as a good house. Except that it's all made up bullshit from 19th century financial chroniclers. We know today that tulip mania was not the cataclysmic bubble burst it was made to be centuries later. I view it similarly to the crypto crash. It was essentially worthless anyway and didn't affect regular Joes as much as a housing crash, or too many companies being overvalued and needing to downsize at the same time when the jig is up. The price of printer ink. It's literally cheaper by like $10.30 to buy a new cheap printer every time you run out of ink than to buy more ink. It really is such a scam. The Dark Ages thing where the church asked people for money in exchange for a ticket to heaven when they die. Indulgences were the late medieval period Renaissance. Not the Dark Ages. Blaming everyday people for climate change when the real culprits are big companies and industrial countries. Trickle-down economics. I don't care which party you're in, convincing our parents that by giving rich people more money they'd get more and somehow getting them to buy that bullshit is the most impressive con I've ever seen run. I think when any president gets elected, without the popular vote, it is a scam. Name another democracy where gerrymandering and states with the lowest populations determine results. Maybe, but no one ever complain when their guy wins. You can't try our Monday Frere. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party first got elected in 2015, to a massive majority. During the election they promised voting reform. That was hugely popular with a lot of people. I, and many others, handed their party a huge majority, and they turned around and said this worked out great for us. We've decided to not look into voting reform. It's one of several reasons I have voted NDP ever since. Many others stopped voting Liberal because of it as well. Duck ever voting for the Conservatives, but the Liberals lost my vote in large part because of that.